Hello everyone, welcome to this game of the day for the round number 10 of the candidates tournament between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Kirill Alekseenko. So Jan is leading the tournament so far. He is playing against the wild card of the tournament, another Russian player who is starting his second part of the tournament quite well. He started with a win, his first win of the tournament against Alexander Grishuk. And so let's see how this game went. Of course, Jan Nepomniachtchi is white and he is willing to win this game to increase his advance. Let's see how it went. So the games start with an English opening move order. So Jan is playing with c4. And Alekseenko has chosen something that seems to prove that he was willing to play a Nimso Indian. He played knight f6 and after g3, which is a pure English opening move, Alekseenko is playing e6. So after that Jan followed with bishop to g2, and after d5 he has a white choice. Of course, with white he can play with d4, transposing into the Catalan variation. And in the game he played bishop to knight to f3, sorry, more or less transposing into more reti type of position. And actually here Alekseenko doesn't have a lot of experience, and he played d takes c4, but I'm not sure that he really knows or prepared this opening a lot, because he more or less proved that he had some problems in the opening, while as we will see, Nepomniachtchi is going to play as usual in this opening. Knight a3 is a common move here, but he played with queen to a4, which is another way to get the pawn back. Queen a4 check, so knight bd7 is one of the main line. Bishop d7 or c6 are quite decent alternatives. But after knight bd7, the point of white's play is to be able to develop the queen side quite quickly. That's why Alekseenko played with a6. The goal of this move is to follow with b5 and bishop b7 immediately, and the other option is c5 immediately. Actually, this is the only move that Jan Nepomniachtchi faced in his previous games. He played this exact position a long time ago in 2004 when he was only 14 years old, and he won a game against Yevgeny Romanov after short castle b6, knight c3 and d3, and he is willing to play with e4. But this game is a long time ago, so I'm not sure he was willing to play the same plan. But still, as we will see, you don't really change with time. So he is playing the same line again. So in this game, Alekseenko goes for the other main line. Apart from c5, he plays a6. And after queen c2, which is intending to prevent b5, because after b5 there is knight d4 with the problem on the rook. So the point of queen c2 is not having the queen under attack after b5. So after queen c2, Alekseenko played c5, which is the usual move. Knight c3 has been played, and here there is a white choice for black. A lot of quite bad moves, and let's say that the bad news in this position for Alekseenko is that he doesn't really know the position. He has already spent more than 15 minutes here, and he was still thinking for quite some time, and he didn't choose the right move here. He went for bishop e7, which has a terrible score in practice. It is a logical move, but it leaves white with too many options on the center, and instead of this move intending to castle on the next move, he should have done something intending to develop the queen side first. So that's what happened in another Russian game, or at least for dark side. The game in the previous vacancy 3 months ago, Danchenko against Esipenko, won by black. Alekseenko, the Russian player, played queen c7, and after short castle, the point is to play b6. And black is ready to play b6 because there is no longer some problems on this file, because if the knight moves somewhere, then simply bishop b7 is protecting the rook. Not protecting, but the rook is no longer under attack. So there is no good square for the knight on f3, so moving the knight is pointless, and after d4, bishop b7, and bishop f4, bishop to d6. This position is quite equal, maybe slightly better for white, but at least black has managed to play bishop b7, which is a huge improvement over the current game. So that is probably the best way to play for black. Instead, Alekseenko has chosen bishop e7, which is not a good move. He's already in trouble after d4, I think, because now that the center is opening, it becomes clear that black is unable to be as active as white. He's unable to develop the bishop on c8. He doesn't have great squares for the queen on d8. It's quite hard to play. Maybe it was the last attempt to develop with a b5. It's not an easy move, of course, because you don't really want to open the long diagonal for the light squared bishop of white. And after knight e5, that requires some precise play by taking on e5. And of course, if bishop takes a8, then there is c takes d4, with some play for black, one extra pawn against the exchange and some play on the center. So this would be okay for black. But d takes e5 is strong, knight d5, and takes, and bishop e3, and there is no good way to protect c5. And still, the computer seems to prove that it's still playable for black, even with a pawn down here, because probably white will have a strange pawn structure after, let's say, rook c8 and b4 and takes on c5. It seems to be still holdable for black, but definitely white is better. But b5 was a hard move to find, and Alekseenko couldn't make it happen. He played c takes d4, which instead opens the diagonal of the bishop on g2, and white brings his knight toward the center. He's intending to follow with rook d1, as occurred in the game here. So rook to d8 was played, and bishop e3. So here it's really hard to find something to do with black. You can't move the b pawn, of course, because it's pinned. That means you can't really develop the bishop or the rook. So it's like you're playing with two pieces down. He played knight b6. So he's willing to bring the knight somewhere. Maybe, it's not clear, maybe d5 or maybe c4. Attacking the bishop on e3, and also he's intending what he did in the game, playing e5 and being able to move the bishop on c8. And sometimes also just simply being able to play bishop d7, but I think the real idea is to go e5 and bishop somewhere. Here, Nepomniachtchi is just centralizing his pieces. He played rook a to c1. You never know, sometimes there are some ideas like knight to d5 with some discovery attack on the queen, and if the queen takes, then you can take on e7. There might be some trouble for black somewhere. Alekseenko played e5, and I checked another move. I checked the idea of bishop d7, which is more passive, but that looks more solid, as we will see. But there are definitely some problems. After queen to b3, there are a lot of threats. So, for example, the rook on c1 is attacking the queen on c7, not attacking, but threatening some discovery attack from the knight on c3. And so the knight on b6 is under attack of both the queen on b3 and the bishop on e3. That can lead to some knight f5 or knight takes e6 ideas with the knight on b6 hanging. So the position is not safe at all, and for example, after bishop c5, then bishop to g5 is very strong. The point is to get the e4 square for the knight, with some pinning ideas for white. So bishop c6, I check this move, takes, rook takes d8, and for example after rook takes d8, simply bishop takes and knight e4. And the position is just a nightmare. There is a winning move here, quite a easy tactic, let's say. Rook takes c6, attacking both the queen and the knight, and if black takes it, then it's game over after knight takes f6 with check. The queen is lost, and so is black, so the position is hopeless. And it was already hopeless for a long time. Here, computer already seems to show that white is already winning after bishop d5. And the same goes after e5. The position is already probably winning with an accurate play. And that's what Jan Nepomniachtchi managed to do in the game. He played knight f5, attacking the bishop on e7, more or less forcing bishop takes, queen takes. And white has a bishop pair in a very open position, and he has tremendous play on the c and d file. And that's why I think black played knight c4. He's willing to get the bishop pair back. Also maybe sometimes attack the pawn on b2, some this kind of ideas. But Jan Nepomniachtchi is playing bishop g5, intending to try the bishop against the knight and to get the amazing square on d5 for his own knight, attacking. That would be attacking everything, the queen, the bishop on f6, and also the knight on c4 is in trouble. That's why black play rook takes d1 in order to disrupt white's harmony of the pieces. He took back with the knight, and it's just in order to play on the pin on this file. And after rook d8 there will be a trap after bishop takes, bishop takes. You can't go with b3 with white. That looks like the obvious move, but it's simply no good. This is a blunder actually for white. It doesn't win a piece, it will lose the game after knight to e3. Both the queen on f5 and the rook on c1 are under attack, and if white takes the queen on c7, which is hanging, then he's getting mated after rook takes d1 and rook takes f1 with mate. So no way for white to escape after knight to e3. So b3 would be a terrible mistake. But Jan Nepomniachtchi is playing bishop e4, and there is no way to do anything about this threat on h7 with a huge play. So black played queen a5, he has to. White goes knight to c3 to bring the knight toward d5. So as in the game, there is nothing you can do about h7. Knight d5 is coming with a lot of threats, so he's just running with the king. Knight d5 and b5 to protect the knight. There's again not much you can do with black. It's really hard to say that the move is a bad move or a good move. Just everything is losing for black. So really hard to give black some or any advice. So in the game he took on h7, eventually threatening to mate with queen h8, because the queen on e7 is impossible to reach with the king. That's why he took on d5 with the idea that it's not just losing an exchange, he's willing to play queen to d2, attacking both the rook on c1 and the bishop on d5. So he's getting this part of the material back, and Jan Nepomniachtchi took on c4, b takes c4, and there was a nicer win, I think, than what he did. He played e4, defending the bishop simply. So he has an extra pawn, and he has all the activity of the opposite colored bishop, because he has an amazing light square bishop on d5, while the bishop on f6 is a really bad piece. It can't come into play because it has no way to come. For example, if you go bishop e7, then there is mate on h8. So you can't really activate this bishop in the next few moves. But still, instead of e4, it was probably stronger to start with queen h8 and to bring the queen to the other side, protecting the bishop, and also intending queen b7 with some problems on the 7th rank for black. And for example, I checked queen takes e2, but it's already mate by force, or completely winning after queen b7. And for example, king d8, trying to run on the other part of the board. queen b6, queen d7, and bishop c6 is just the winning move. In case of king e6, there is bishop to f3. So winning the queen due to the check. The discovery check, and after king e7 there is a mate. There is queen c7 check. If you come to e6, this is mate in 1. And if the black king goes to f8, then check, and it comes back to the e7 and then f8 and it's mate. So this was already completely winning. What Jan Nepomniachtchi played is also winning, maybe less strong objectively, but still completely winning after queen takes. So it's no longer an extra pawn, but then the queens come to the queen side, and that's when you see that an opposite color bishop in this kind of position is so powerful. There's nothing you can do with black on the light squares, and also it's like the bishop on f6 is completely useless. So even with equal materials, the position is completely lost. He played queen b6, he took on c4, so he's now an extra pawn. He has to wait somehow, as the pawn on f7 is lost. So he's trying to trade queens. Maybe if you take on f7 and then take back on c4, it might be holding for black. I adopt it's a draw, but still there are chances as long as white is accepting to play an endgame without the queens. Then there are drawing chances. But instead, Jan Nepomniachtchi is keeping the queens on the board. Queen d7, queen c5, and Alekseenko decided to give up. Also, it seems I forgot to mention that Alekseenko was playing really low on time, while Jan Nepomniachtchi was more than 1 hour on the clock. So he had plenty of time to think if he needed to. So yeah, completely hopeless for black. For example, after queen to d6, that seems logical. Then queen a7, you have to defend the pawn on f7, so that makes queen d7 the only move. Queen takes a6, and something like after king f8, h4. And the position is hopeless because anyway, now even we're in the bishop endgame, this would be completely winning because there are two potential passed pawns. The pawn on a2 is already passed, and this is quite far from the king side, and it will be possible at any time for white to get another passed pawn at some point later with some letter h6, creating another passed pawn. And with two so far passed pawns, then the position can't hold for black. You will keep the king somewhere on one of the pawn, the bishop on the other one, and the white king will go where the bishop tries to defend, and it will win by force. So even the endgame is winning, and also there is little chance that white is going to allow an endgame anyway, or bishop endgame I mean. Anyway, in the next few moves, the goal is clear. He will push his a pawn and try to promote it, while it won't be so easy for black to defend it, knowing that he also needs to, at any moment, protect his 7th rank, otherwise the pawn on f7 is going to fall. So you can't do both with black, or probably you can't, to keep f7 under protection and to prevent the pawn on a4 to promote in the next sequence of moves. That's why he decided to give up a few moves earlier after queen c5. A very convincing win by Jan Nepomniachtchi. Also, it has to be mentioned that Alekseenko's preparation was quite weak against this line, which is a sideline, but it is quite an important sideline, let's say. It's very strange that he played something that is not his usual repertoire. He has no experience with it, and it tended to be quite a problem in this game. He couldn't handle the pressure that Jan Nepomniachtchi put on him, and this is a fine win for Jan. So that means in the tournament now, Jan Nepomniachtchi is in an extra point. He's a point up, a full point up, in front of 3 players, Fabiano Caruana, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and Anish Giri. The 2 latter drew today, so 1 extra point for Jan Nepomniachtchi, who is definitely the sole leader of this candidates tournament 2021.